Okay, so it's time to look at conclusions for your Crow Country essay. If you've managed to get this far, then you've done all the hard work. This really is quite easy, quite straightforward, and it's certainly not something that you should be worried about if you've managed to complete all the other steps up to this point. Now, let's go through this really quickly. The purpose of a conclusion is to essentially put a stamp on what you've argued and to summarize all the points that you've argued throughout the remainder of your essay. And you can do that by following the structure that we see here. We want to restate our topic first so that we reorient the marker and say, well, this is what we're talking about. And then we move on from there. And the next point or the next step you have to follow, the next bit of content you need to include, is to summarize your arguments. And you do this very briefly. You don't want to repeat yourself too much, but you do want to show your marker. You don't want to show the person who's reading your essay exactly what you've argued. And then the closing statement. For some reason, this seems to be one of the more difficult things for students, is writing a really good closing statement. But it's certainly not something that should provide too much difficulty at all. So let's have a quick look. If we want to restate the topic, I always think about trying to find the key elements in your thesis, because your thesis is going to answer the question. The thesis underpins all the arguments that you're going to be making throughout all your body paragraphs. It really is the center of your essay. So it's a good place to refer back to it here. So if we just have a look at the thesis that was used in the sample body paragraph that we discussed in a previous tutorial, we might be able to steal some ideas from that in order to restate the topic here. So if I was looking at the thesis here, the red writing, and I wanted to try and add it as a restate of the topic for my conclusion, I might say something along the lines of, through her novel Crow Country, Kate Constable brings to our attention the fact that racial prejudice still exists in contemporary Australia and encourages readers to show greater respect for Indigenous Australians and their cultural history. So you can see that what I've tried to do there is I've summed up um, my stance on the topic here. So we've reiterated the key terms of the question. We're talking about the issue of, in this case, one of the negative issues of Australian society. And I've really sort of summarised the stance, or here's what Kate Constable's trying to teach us about this particular topic. So that's not a bad way to restate the topic. And all I've done is taken a version of my thesis and I've sort of reworked it to fit there. The next thing we need to do is to summarise our arguments. Now, be careful here because you don't want to repeat yourself too much. So you don't want to just take the same wording from your body paragraphs, but you do want to provide a really quick summary of the sorts of things that you've written about in your previous paragraphs. So, for example, if you're talking about the characterization of Sadie and how her actions um, demonstrate the fact that she does respect Indigenous culture while others disrespect it, like Craig Mortlock, then you're talking about characterization and their actions and their behaviour, possibly their dialogue as well in those sorts of incidents. So you use those key words because then you're showing the how part of the question, you're showing which characters are representing it or how it's depicted, and then you're showing what idea they're presenting in terms of the racial prejudice that's depicted. So you want to try and do that fairly quickly. You don't want to write too many sentences here. It does say summarize your arguments, and most people will write a sentence that summarizes each body paragraph, but you don't have to do that if you find a better way to summarize that information more quickly. And then the last thing here is a closing statement, and for some reason students really struggle with this, yet I don't think it needs to be that hard. You want to present something insightful, so really reflect on your learning. What has completing this essay really taught you? Or as you know, the marker of your essay, what is it that you want me to walk away with? What do you want to have taught me as the person reading this essay? Um, and for this sort of topic, it might be something as simple as um, throughout the novel, Kate Constable raises our awareness of the fact that racial prejudice is still an issue in contemporary Australia. And as audiences, we are the ones who are able to make that change. So something as simple as that, where that's the insight that I get from this, is that yeah, we know that this happens. We know that there are still problems and tensions in terms of um, our respect or lack of respect for Indigenous Australians, but then that reflection on, well, actually it's the audience who needs to make that change, also provides a little bit of insight as well. So you're still stating what you've argued, and you've still related it to the topic, but you're also showing what you've learnt out of doing that. Please don't say, I've really learnt a lot, and get into that sort of personal reflection. You want to still keep it very formal and don't use any personal language like I think or I feel or I've learnt. So, in a nutshell, that's a conclusion. Nice and quick, nice and easy. And again, if you manage to get this far in your essay, you should be able to do a pretty good job of this one.